Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here, and we're ready for another Survivor 46 post-game interview. Today, we're going to be talking with Ben Katzman. Ben, I think, is an interesting person to talk to after the season is over. Ben is somebody who talked a little bit about how he kind of got lost in the edit and had more of a story to tell. So that's the perfect opportunity for something like this. We can hear a little bit more about what Ben had going on in his game. Of course, that this is the fourth of the postseason interviews that I have done so far. If you missed my conversations with Charlie, Liz, or Q so far, you could see them all at robhasawebsite.com or on our YouTube channel at robhasawebsite.com/YouTube. So let's bring in my conversation with Ben. Hey, Ben, what's going on? So excited to get the chance to talk to you here after the season is over.
Dude, this is so sick. I'm honored to be here. Look at us chilling hard virtually.
We're chilling, we're shredding, we're ready to go. What have you been up to? I saw that you went to go to Taylor Swift overseas.
It was so sick. Yeah, Charlie and I, after a year or whatever, how long it's been, I managed to get us on the guest list for Taylor Swift in Liverpool. So we made a trip out of it with our girlfriends. And then we also saw Liam Gallagher the next day.
Oh, wow.
And it was like
Oasis too?
Dude, it was awesome. It was like, first I was like trying to take it all in at Taylor Swift, and everybody knows the words and it's a whole spectacle. But it was like very tame compared to the next day. Because yes, Oasis is like a pop rock band, but like we saw them in their hometown of Manchester. So the pit was very active the whole time. And like I had this amazing video of people sloshing and screaming, and Charlie's just standing like in the wave. It was the time of my life. It ripped.
I'm so interested to know you. I was listening to your preseason interview with Mike Bloom also, and you talked about some of the things that were, in your mixtapes and things that were going to help you in the game. Did any of the things that you were, jotting down, whether they were from Sam and Frodo or Master Splinter, did any of that stuff end up being useful for you?
Oh, well, the night of my first like night terror, and I don't know, like it wasn't like a night terror, but it was like we moved to that new beach, and instead of sleeping on bamboo or in sand, we're on the dirt. And the old beach at Sega was tucked away from the ocean. So it was like the fire, everything felt super insulated. We're at the merge, everything was like super cold. So I had all the elements coming at me. I was super uncomfortable and I was shook, like my body shot up. I didn't realize it was winter. Nobody told me. So all I had was like a thin denim jacket, Anyways, point being, I'm up by the fire the whole night. I can't sleep. And I'm thinking about that scene where Splinter is projecting himself to the turtles. And he's like talking about using your emotions as a tool and all that stuff. And I think of all the quotes, like our cast was so insane. You had like the Secret Six being so thinking they were running the show in front of your face. And I even remember there was that scene from Cool Runnings where they're like, look in the mirror and tell me what you see. I see pride. I see power. I just kept trying to keep it together and remind myself who I was. And all those like pop cultural touchstones have always been in my mind. And I would say that mixtape definitely gave me a little bit of fuel, no pun intended with Metallica there, to keep going. But any night I couldn't sleep, that's kind of what I tried to focus on. And, they didn't show that deleted scene with, it's not even deleted scene because they didn't edit it, but Charlie and I had so much Sam and Frodo energy and one-liners throughout the entire game. On the last night, which was like, again, I don't know, I can't watch it objectively, but yes, I got some anxiety, but what was shown was real, maybe a milder version of it. But like, I had never experienced that type of like internal physical insanity. And on the last night, I had my like worst night terror. And Charlie comes down to me and goes, remember when like Frodo was like losing it on Mount Doom? And Sam's like, I might not be able to carry the ring, but I can carry Frodo. Charlie pulled me over his back, and then he carried me up the stairs back to like the tent we had. And then we went to sleep. It was like there were so many good
Wow.
moments
On
like
night
that.
25.
And that was on night 25, which was like, it wasn't really about the game. I think, before the merge, there wasn't a lot of food, but we had like papaya and stuff. But I didn't eat from the merge feast to the pizza reward. And I was like a vegetarian up until like 2 months before the show because I got cast pretty late. So I only started eating meat. I was on tour of Europe like a month before I went to Fiji. And it was then when I started eating meat and trying to like bulk up. So my body, I think, just was like not prepared for that physical insanity. And it's like, I even say it in the edit. It's like, I can rationalize why this is happening to me, but I feel like my mind and body are separate. I couldn't control my body, and it was like intense, it was started affecting me mentally. But yeah, that happened on the last night, when like you should be celebrating and chilling hard because all the posers have been voted out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
All right. Well, Ben, I want to talk a little bit about your game and something that we heard from some of the players talking about you
yeah.
was that players seem to like, two or three people different said that they felt like that you didn't talk a lot of strategy with them. Do you feel like was that accurate, or there were just certain people you did not want to talk strategy with?
I don't know. I'm pretty sure I know who you're quoting. It's probably Maria.
Mm-hmm.
But the weird part about that is, I'm going to try to not sound like I'm talking crap, but like we are talking about the game.
And I feel like that Jem also was somebody else who
Well,
said that
Jem
about.
might be the only person that I don't think I ever sat down and talked strategy with, and maybe like Hunter. But like Hunter was a challenge beast, and he was in the 6. And while the 6 was happening, I was like, who are they not talking to? I'll go link up with them.
Mm-hmm.
But starting at the beginning, yeah, it was like before the merge, Jem was like kind of like snapping at me a little bit. I had like the first conversation I had with her, I was talking about astrology, and she was like, guess my zodiac sign. And I correctly guessed she was a Sagittarius. And like, it was like, she gave me this look like I clocked her gameplay, which is such a trivial
Can you
thing,
do that? Can you guess people's zodiac signs? I know you talked about that.
Sometimes, but
Jeff had Scorpio energy.
Oh yeah, I can do it sometimes. I'm not a psychic,
Yeah.
But Jen was talking about being a visual merchandiser, and she was
Can you
telling
do me? Do you know me?
I don't, but give me till the end of the interview and I'll figure it out. But Jen was like kind of playing hard on like day 1, day 2. And you watch those secret scenes that are on YouTube. And I was the first one to throw her name out there, and we're tight like this now. But like, I wasn't the only one who noticed that Jem was playing hard, especially around the time that we were digging the tree. And so like, I didn't feel the need to talk strategy too much. A, because we were winning, right? Not first place, but we were safe from those tribals. But B, I felt like we all kind of understood Jem would slit our throats at the merge,
Mm-hmm.
And she had snapped on Tim. She had kind of snapped on Charlie, not in like these crazy overt, like, but like just enough when somebody is like, they're not vibing with you 100% the way you would like. And with Maria before the merge, we were really tight. That's like a misleading thing about the edit is like, she had told us about Charlie's Angels on like 5 minutes after it was formed. She's like, they're trying to form an alliance, the girls, and we have Charlie in it, but I'm not sure I want to work with them. And it kind of made me and Tim look like we were clueless to what was going on. But like, it couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth, But I also felt like, how much strategy can you talk if you know who you vibe with? I told Charlie, Maria, and Tim, I fuck with y'all, And I'm also like, you look at the downsides of talking too much strategy when there's nothing to talk about, which is what happened, I think, at Nami. When you see all those secret scenes, they're always talking strategy. And then it's like they all start turning on each other because they're all starting to get suspicious. And I'm like a chill dude. And when we got to the merge, I knew people were going to start playing hard and it was going to be time to flip. I just didn't think it was going to be as vicious as it was. And like, I can't objectively view our season the way somebody at home will. but watching it back makes it look way cleaner than how it felt on the island. There were so many more twists and turns from that merge feast to Mo going home than it just clearly being Mo. Like when I'm watching them, like everybody looks super clean. I'm like, those confessionals look like they're from the next day after this was all said and done. But yeah, the lack of strategy thing, it's like there is a truth to that in the sense that like after Maria had kind of, told everybody I had an idol and became distrustful, that Secret Six, which wasn't so secret, was really comfortable with each other. They didn't talk to Liz. They didn't talk to me. They didn't talk to Venus because they didn't take us seriously. And I remember even one time I was cool with a lot of these people. I remember trying to talk to Tevin. I was like, so what do you think is happening? Knowing he wasn't going to like include me in the six, but he just sat there. He's like, I don't really know. I'm like, you must think I'm like a total idiot if I can't see this. But at that point, I was just like, I'm at the bottom. I do click with people. I can work with Tiff in a capacity. Sega's dysfunctional. But I had this like game plan of like, let me put all the dorks together, myself included. And that's what I wish the storyline of the season is that the final four, which was like Kenzie, Liz, and Charlie and me, were not taken very serious by any of the quote unquote serious contenders.
Yeah.
And it kind of made it look like Kenzie was a bit of a lone wolf or that Liz was this irrational person with the Applebees. But like we did talk a lot and we just knew people were blinded by their own arrogance. And that is exactly how it played out too,
Yeah. Well, then
Sorry,
unless there's anything from
that
that was a lot there, and that was all good information. That unless you have anything else from the pre-merge, like we can jump ahead to talking about when you all got together.
Yeah, well, it's like the only thing I'll say about the pre-merge, and there's that secret scene that's on YouTube, is that like we did have a lot of fun. It was great, like even when Jem was like, when I was digging the tree and she'd be like, I don't think Ben is digging. Maybe he has the advantage or the idol. And I'd have like ant bites all over my arms. I'm like, this girl's throwing my name. And then Tim clocked her, but like when we didn't know that she had the idol going home, like it wasn't confirmed, it really did raise some serious suspicions. And it's crazy that wasn't enough of a storyline to make the edit. And I get why they got to tell the story of the Yanu 3, but like that huge splintering of Sega at the merge was really based that Maria threw Tim under the bus to Q, which we didn't know till we watched the show. And then Q had told Tim on his journey that he thought I got something from the journey with Banu, which is like great gameplay on Q to just stir shit up. But like there was this serious level of mistrust, but in my mind, we had been inseparable, and I felt like, I know I'm good. I know I don't have the idol. I just didn't expect it to be turned on so hard to the point where even at like Final Tribal, I was being called a liar about the idol, So it was a recurring theme for me the whole time. But if you want to jump into the merge, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Let's jump into the merge. And so you guys go to the mergatory, and you're part of the group that ends up being safe, which is nice.
Yep.
And so I suspect you didn't want Mariah to go home, right?
I didn't want Mariah to go home, and I knew that we would need to throw someone's name out there. In hindsight, we shouldn't have been hesitant at all. Like the crazy part about Mergatory is that both votes, the Yanu 3, are safe. And we had got to the merge before we threw Mariah's name out. And I don't know, it's like we were very tight as a Sega 5. Even if we weren't hanging out the whole time, I didn't realize people would clock it so easily. But we got to the merge, and like everybody in Nami was willing to throw each other under the bus. Like Tevin immediately throwing Venus under. Venus already willing to sacrifice people. I think Liz and Hunter were like the chillest ones. And I was like, oh, they're splintered. That'll be easy, And when we got to the feast, there was this whole thing like, y'all need to throw out a name. We throw out a name. And Q was pushing for that. I'm like, he doesn't have to throw out any names. And I thought Q was like so obviously stirring like a lot of
Mhm.
drama up with his fake rumors about idols and all this stuff. I was like, I thought everybody was going to immediately clock how insane Q was. He really had a hold on all these people for like 2, 3, maybe 4 days. And yeah, I didn't want to throw Mo's name under the bus, but I knew it might have to happen. And in the way it did happen was not shown. It was like we left the feast. I think it was going to be Venus or Soda. And Charlie was like on a journey or a confessional. So Charlie wasn't around for like when the feast initially broke up. And everybody at the table didn't know that Mo was left out of the vote until Charlie got back to camp. And Charlie gets back to camp and accidentally says to Tevin, it's like, oh yeah, Mo was left out. And Tevin goes, oh, that's the crack that we need to find in Sega, and started going around. And I mean, it was great on Tevin's part. I give him props for like finding that entry point.
Mhm.
I just didn't think it was going to be Sega after Sega. And yeah, it did not rock, as I might say.
Did not rock. Okay. So Mariah ends up going home, and then you end up kind of in a tough spot here when you
Yeah.
go to the split vote, and
Yeah.
ultimately, it could have been you.
Totally.
It ends up being Tim.
Well, the funny thing about that, I've talked about this before, but I knew when Tim came up to me and he was saying Hunter, I'm like, there's no way. Like,
Yeah.
Hunter's in the 6. The fact you're not willing to turn
So
on
you
me.
knew about the 6 at this point, and how
Tim
did you
had told
know?
me as soon as he got back from the journey
Got
that
it.
he threw Maria's name out there. And it's funny because it's like, for a lot of people that did the pre-interviews, I know you listened to the Mike Bloom one,
Yeah.
almost everybody put their foot in their mouth. Tiff with her idol, Jem with her idol. You know, Tim said, I won't reveal who my number one is. I'm going to have a public number one and a secret number one. And him and Maria were close before the merge. So even in that clip when she said Tim wasn't even my number 3, I'm like, that is so insane compared to how we would hang out all day and they would bond over parenthood. And those two talked a lot of strategy.
Mhm.
Like, I don't buy that line whatsoever. But I knew about the 6 because Tim told me, and Tim was like, I don't want to throw your name out there. And we had already felt like Q did not fuck with me before that journey.
Yeah.
Because I would go over to them after the challenges and just try to be like, keep your head in there. Like, sorry you didn't get this one, maybe the next one. And Q would never look at me. But if Tim would go and do that, Q would respond to Tim. And I'd be
Mhm.
like, I don't think Q fucks with me, you know? And he did it. So
Yeah.
I
What
wasn't
if
wrong.
Tim would have said that you were his number 1? Would that have changed things?
I think about that sometimes, and I think it could have. But when it comes to talking about that alliance, which is like the worst alliance in Survivor history, they might as well be called the jury because that's what they became. Is like
The jury 6. Yeah.
yeah, the jury 6. And believe me, I wanted to make that joke, but I got told time.
Mhm.
Q couldn't take his foot off the gas. He really had this shot at controlling the game, and nobody was really questioning him. And he got really power hungry. You see it in that episode with the hide and seek. I think even if I was in it, he would have blown it up and started turning on it because he turned on Tiff. He had no problem doing that. You know, he turned on Tevin and Hunter. Like, so I don't know if it would have made a difference. I think the only difference it would have made is people might have had a different perception of me
Mhm.
going in, you know. But according to Tim, Q already had an idea I had the idol. So it wasn't until even we were at the split vote that I like emptied my bag and showed Q I had nothing. And then the story after Tim went home is that I played my idol on myself to send Tim home.
Mhm.
Like, there was a lot of reason for there to be distrust because,
Who
Q
was
and
that
Marie,
for?
huh?
Who was that story for? Who were they trying to convince?
Oh, I mean, Maria was the most easily convinced. I think she ate that thing hook, line, and sinker. When you watch
Mhm.
the secret scene that's on YouTube, it's like, here's 2 facts. Q was telling people I had an idol. I saw him do it with my own eyes the moment we got to the merge. Before that second split vote, I went up to Maria. I'm like, Q's telling people I have an idol. And Maria goes, well, do you? And then we got told lockdown and had to go to the challenge. That was the last thing she said
Mhm.
before that split vote. So I'm like, he already got to her, you know? And when I got back to camp after Tim went home, nobody talked to me for like maybe like over one night, like the course of 2 days or something like that. And it was rough. Like Venus would walk around and be like, so do you have an idol? Nobody wanted to talk strategy with me. I like, it was like I just got thrust into the bottom, but it felt very personal. Like people were calling me a liar. It was, and then, you watch the show and that's not even a storyline. It's like hard to kind of accept what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So at this point in the show, this is when we first see you have those panic attacks at nighttime. Is that when they first started happening? And do you think that
They happened before the split vote.
Okay.
When Tim was still in the game, because it was so funny. It's like I woke up and I like, Kenzie was there, but Tim was also there. He goes, that's my Ben, and that it rattled me, but it wasn't really gameplay. I was still super excited to be there, but it did pick up after Tim went, but it wasn't so intense until a little later on, and even when that was happening, they show it in this way where I'm like a victim and like maybe Kenzie needs to hold my hand. I like went out of my way to not be a burden, and I would make jokes about it. Like when I woke up, and like the truth is, regardless of how it was portrayed, and I am grateful Kenzie was my friend out there, it wasn't her story. First off, it was mine. And a lot of people helped me through that. Like it's kind of what brought that Final Four together. Like Charlie would stay up with me. Liz would stay up with me. Venus would stay up with me. And the cast, the rest of them, none of them checked on me or asked how I was doing, and so it happened, but like I would laugh about it, and it wasn't like me crying all night. Yes, I definitely cry a lot. I know I got the tears of the season. My new album's called Tears on the Beach, but it really started picking up after Tim went, but it wasn't something that I felt was so detrimental to my game. And like, I really did suffer, but like you see it in the show, I'm still yelling and having fun in the challenges. I'm still smiling. Like I didn't have like a meltdown or snap at anybody about it. Like I was still so stoked to be there because I was like, this will end at some point, like this too shall pass. But yeah.
All right. So Tim ends up going out, and did you know it was going to be Tim? Were you going into that tribal council thinking it could have been you?
I knew that there was a chance it was me, but the writing was on the wall. Tim and I were walking around Sega, and I think Tim really thought it was going to be me or Hunter, but I already knew Q loved Hunter. They had the Mississippi thing. I saw it in pre-merge, Kenzie was really cool with Hunter. Hunter's also a great shield, great at challenges, and he's a lovely dude to be around, and people like Hunter are great to have in the game for at least that portion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what wasn't shown is like a lot of people were trying to split me and Tim up before that vote anyways, because it's like we were singing brotherly love all the time and clearly laughing and having a good time. But again, Tim went on a confessional right before we went to tribal. And like when Tim was going and talking to the camera, I saw them all hanging out and canoodling, and I had the writing on the wall. And it's like we were on the boat. I don't know if this is going to get cut, but as we're leaving camp to tribal, I constantly am silent screaming at Tim, play your shot in the dark, shot in the dark. And I think Tim thought I was saying, should I play my shot in the dark?
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, it was on the wall. Like even in that challenge where we're all balancing on the water, they show like 10 seconds of it, but Tim shouted out everybody's significant other, their cousin, their parent, their dog. He gave away that he was cool with everyone, which is like a Survivor faux pas, And I remember sitting there being like, wow, Tim is chilling with everyone, and now they all know. And at tribal, Jeff, the master that he is, has Hunter and Tim going at it, pitching their case to the Yanu 3 for like what felt like at least a half hour. And Tim's like, I'm social, I'm this, I'm a good number. Hunter's a beast, he's going to win all the challenges. And then Hunter would be like, I'm willing to flip on Nami. And after 30 minutes, Jeff goes, Ben, what's your pitch? And the second he asked me what my pitch was, it's like it was clear he was putting Tim on this like social pedestal and giving like these smoke signals, and Tim didn't take the bait. And then like before we went to vote, he asked Tim, what did he take away from his journey? And I was like sitting there and be like, oh my God, like he's like asking Tim as if this is like an exit interview or something. Because if you're a Survivor super fan, you're reading those cues when you're watching it as the audience. I was reading it in the front row, you know, and it was brotherly love. It did not rock when Tim went home. But
Okay.
I had told Tim, play your shot in the dark. He just felt safe, I guess, you know.
Okay, so when Tim goes out, okay,
Yeah.
the next vote ends up being the Tevin vote.
Yeah.
Was this sort of like the first time like these people who are the quote unquote misfits get together to make something
No.
happen?
No, not at all. But it's the beginning of it. And we had a day off between when Tim went home and when Tevin went home. And that was the day nobody really talked to me, right? It was like I was isolated. That's like when Charlie and I became really close again. Like it was like confirmed our friend, like that we're working together. But that day off was hide and seek. And I just like hid really well because I just like nobody was really talking to me. It was like really hard to go through. And the next day, like Liz came out of the woodwork and wanted to have that move to send Tevin. And I was like, okay, Liz is a player. Liz said I was really hard to read because I was going through it and didn't want to talk strategy for a bit. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk strategy that day. I just was so in my own feelings, you know? But Liz comes over to the Sega 3 and Maria's like, I'm willing to work with you. Do you want to work together in this dysfunctional way? She didn't say it was dysfunctional. I did. And we got through that vote. And it wasn't the first time that those, like the final four really came together. But like that day after Tim went home and Q sent all those rumors around, I was seething to get Q out. But I knew if I said something, people would think I'm a rat. It was kind of like, you know, when Cochran was on the outs in South Pacific Redemption Island. Like, you know, you're at the bottom, but if you try to make a move, nobody's going to take you seriously. So I kept my mouth shut and I was like, I'm just going to wait for the opportunity to appear. Because I clocked Q being insane right away. And I was cool with Kenzie. And I also think, side note, and I'm going on all these tangents, one of the reasons I didn't go home over Tim was because Kenzie won immunity and me and her were becoming really close around that time. And I remember she was like, give me one reason you shouldn't go home over Tim. I said, my jury fits, duh. But I'm also like, at some point, you're going to have to flip on Yanu. And so me and her were cool. But yeah, the Tevin vote, I was just waiting. Like I knew Kenzie wanted to flip on Q, but couldn't do that because everybody had the numbers. Liz all of a sudden's like, I want to take out Tevin. She was cool with Q at the time. But then at that tribal, when Q did that whole moral high ground thing and ruined Liz's game, then I was like, okay, now Liz hates Q. You know what I'm saying? Then I was finally like, okay, there's people I can talk to. Because when I tried talking about the game to Tevin, he didn't want to talk to me. And it's funny because even at that tribal, when Q was doing his whole speech, I kind of told Tevin, I was like, man, it would suck to feel secure tonight, trying to signal him. But of course, he thought I was a goat, so he wasn't going to listen to me, you know? And that was the first time I felt like, okay, maybe I can get some ground in this game and start putting some people together. And that's after the Tevin vote. Next was Hunter. That was when like the night terror started picking up. And then I was starting to really bond with Liz. And it just kind of came together naturally. Sorry for the rant, but it's like I lived it. And I have to contextualize it.
No, it's all good. In that Tevin vote, when Q says, all right, I'm ready to go home tonight,
I didn't believe it for a second.
Yeah, you seem to say a lot in that tribal council. I don't have the exact quote in front of me. I think you said it was one of the stupidest things that ever happened.
I said I don't care for the shenanigans, you know?
No, you don't care for the shenanigans, right?
Well, so something that wasn't shown before we got to tribal is that Q didn't want Tevin to go home. And something happened with Liz where Liz told Hunter what the plan was, and Hunter was Tevin's number one. It was kind of like that Office episode where Michael Scott like isn't in on the plan. So he creates a bunch of false rumors and everybody traces it back to Michael Scott. Like a lot of people were starting to get pissed at Q before the tribal happened. And obviously the rumor of Tiff's idol was coming out. So I felt like Q got the idea that he's like, people were mad at him. And rather than being voted out like a fool, he wanted to take this high ground and pretend he wanted to quit. I mean, he kind of just did the same thing in his pickleball match with Tyson. If you watch the post-game interview, and mind you, Q and I are very cool. So it's like we were cool in the game, but we'll get to that. But in that moment, I was like, he just doesn't want like his ego bruised. You know, he doesn't want to not know it's coming. So I just felt like it was the most full of shit move I'd ever seen. You know?
Yeah. So what were you thinking when everybody is like moving around at the tribal council and talking?
Everybody was talking about throwing Q's name out. I said, absolutely not. Like Q's got to, I think I said in the edit, like Q's got to work from the bottom and reap what he sows. And to me, I was like, finally, like I can get some people against this dude that sunk my game maliciously. And like, you know, what wasn't shown is that I worked with Q on a few moves. So like, I think it was around the Hunter vote or the Tiff vote. I said to Q, I think it was the Hunter vote. I said to Q, like, listen, a lot of people want to get you out, myself included. But I know, like, if you're a Survivor player, it's better to have a distraction in the game than to, like, just throw out people one by one, you know? And you watch all those tribals. Every time before we vote, I say the meanest, like, harshest thing I could about Q, and everybody bought it. And I had shook my hand with Q and said, Q, if I'm not a dick to you, like you're going to go home because people know I'm mad at you the most, more than Liz at Applebees because of the whole fake idol rumor that was going around. And yeah, I was like kind of stoked. I was like, hell yeah, dude. And I didn't feel like so much anxiety about it after. It sucked for Tevin. I did like him, but also like I'll never forget trying to talk to Tevin about the game. He just stood there and went, I was like, oh, okay. It's like that. Like you couldn't even sell me like a fake plan when I knew he was going home, you know, like.
Can you talk about what happened with the Hunter vote and where you were with all of that? Because at this point, the Segas are on the same page.
Yeah.
You got potentially Tiffany and Kenzie working with you.
Yeah. I mean, we were
Venus
cool
too.
I was cool with all of those people. I was cool with Hunter, but not in like a gameplay way. But like after that vote, they were like ridiculously pissed at Q, and they knew Q did not like me. They did not know I had shook hands with Q yet. But I was like, the most insulting thing to Q would be his two number ones hanging out with somebody who he can't stand, you know? And I knew Maria wanted Tiff out, and something that wasn't shown at the Hunter vote that I felt like was essential for my resume or whatever was like, I had been trying to get Kenzie to flip on Yanu forever. And Kenzie had come up to me at the water well being like, Tiff has an idol. I want to turn on Tiff. I'm ready to play this game. And I had talked to Charlie. She was like, who should I talk to? I said, I don't fuck with Maria, but I think we could do this. And I had told Charlie and Maria that Kenzie was willing to flip. But like, if Kenzie goes to them to act surprised for like my own jury management, right? Instead, the edit just shows Kenzie running to Charlie Maria like I had no plan. But if Kenzie hadn't come to me, we couldn't have delayed that Tiff vote and blinded Kenzie at the next vote. Because I was like, we got to get Hunter out now. And even in the edit, like every time I have a confessional in those episodes, I'm clocking what's going on. So I'm like, I'm not an idiot. I knew I was in the game being played. But I just felt on a personal level, if Hunter can somehow survive this vote and he's been chilling at these challenges, what's it going to be like when he feels the heat and really has to save himself? He's going to win all the way to the end. And I really think Hunter was capable of doing that, you know? So that's why I was like, he's got to go. And especially when you know somebody has an idol publicly, you can deal with that at another time, I think, you know? And I also knew Maria had it out for Tiff. Like I don't know what her beef was. You know, I guess she threw her name out, but it's not like Maria didn't throw her name out. And at this point, I was like, wow, Tevin, first Tim, now Tevin, now Hunter. Like this 6 is the worst alliance in history. And it's like the other thing too, Charlie was in the 6 at that point, but I knew they didn't take him seriously. But I knew he was making his way into these like power dynamics. And that was the great thing about like being a goat and having that perception. It's like Charlie and I could talk freely and nobody would care about what we were saying because they didn't feel like we were a threat. So we could just watch them take themselves out one by one, you know?
Yeah. All right. When we have the vote where Tiffany ends up going home,
Yeah.
was that a hard decision for you to vote against Tiffany with voting with Maria and with Q and having a big threat like Tiffany go out?
I liked Tiff. I think at that point, when you're in that point of the game and the game is so crazy, there's a real lack of like cohesive strategy. Everybody's like shooting from the hip, and
Mhm.
I'm like not sleeping. It wasn't tough for me. I really did like Tiff, but I was more concerned about like Liz and Kenzie and Charlie being in the game. So to me, anything to keep my
As
homies
threats or as allies?
as allies, you
Yeah.
know, I was like, I'm a bigger fan of South Pacific, Redemption Island, any of those seasons where there's a strong alliance that moves together and then dukes it out later. I'm like a
Mhm.
fan of. And I also like, for everything that I'm telling you, I'm clocking the game. I knew that with the Q smoke screen and all this stuff, I would have to rely on my jury speech because everybody, I was playing the perception that I was an idiot. Like, I think they all thought I was writing Q's name down every time when I said Q's going home. And everybody who went home with the blind side had no idea what was going on. So when they got to Ponderosa, nobody was going to say that there was a smoke screen because they didn't really know, you know, like, so I knew I didn't have a real chance of winning unless I got to tell my story. It's like, it's that kind of thing. You can read the room. I felt like it was probably going to be like Charlie or Maria's game to win at that point in the game. You know, that's where I was. So it sucked to send Tiff, but it wasn't like she was like my closest friend out there or something.
Mhm. Did you play any part in getting Liz to vote for Tiffany?
I might have. I just remember. I know Kenzie was left out of that one. I think like that's where it's a little bit of a blur. I just know that like people were coming to the Sega 3 at that point. Like, what are y'all doing? Like nobody had the plan to break up the Sega 3 for a
Mhm.
few votes. So like I felt safe in that dynamic. So I can't on that part, I don't really remember so much. And I think the other thing too is Tiff was after Applebees, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so Liz was like pissed, dude. She was going to be down with whoever as
I'm
long as it wasn't
pissed.
her, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Because we're like, what, like 11, 12 months removed from this actually happening? I do have my journal here, though, which is sick. And I
Whoa.
did write a lot about
Who's
it,
on
but
your journal?
I don't think I have enough time. Let me see if I can
But
find
who's
it.
on the cover? You held it
Jeff
up. Oh, that's
saying the tribe is smoking, but I put for who, though? Hashtag never been snuffed.
When
See,
did
I
you
have all
write?
these chapters.
Yeah.
Organizing the Tevin vote. Liz comes out to play hard is the name of the chapter.
Yeah, that's so
Uh,
smart that you did that because there's so much of my Survivor stuff that I wish I could remember now, like I used to know it. And so you got to Ponderosa and you wrote that, or you did
yeah, I
that at a
started
later?
writing at Ponderosa, and maybe it took me like a week and a half to finish. And it's
Mhm.
like, you know, even my favorite blind side of the season, which I called the Thespian Fashion Show, which was Q's blind side. It's like I just wanted to remember it because I knew a lot of it would get lost in the edit. And like what the
Mhm.
fans don't realize at home is they're watching a TV show, but it's something we lived through and have memories from that don't impact their viewer experience. And I, you know, regardless of how it ended, I had a lot of fun, you know, even when I was suffering. So, you know, I'm still looking for it. It's like I got the Liz meltdown here. I got, you know, it's funny about the Applebee's challenge. If I could throw one thing in, that's like the true return of Spicy Jeff. I'll never forget. Like like before we started that challenge, Jeff's like, "How are you guys doing?" I go to Jeff. I'm like, "You're not going hard on us, bro. You're going soft." He's like, "What do you mean?" It's like you're letting out an insult here and there. Like, I want Spicy Jeff back, and everybody's like, "Yeah." And Jeff's like, "You know, the world's like a sensitive place. I want y'all to have fun." I'm like, "We're dying on Survivor. I think I know what we signed up for."
Mhm.
And we get into the challenge. And this is, I think, the one where Jeff brings like the Twizzlers or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But the first line out of his mouth, Kenzie moving as slow as humanly possible. And then in that same challenge, I landed the beanbag on the pole for Applebees, and Jeff was about to call it for me. And Jeff goes, Ben! And then the beanbag falls and goes, with a moral victory. And it was like, his roasts were so fire. So I just wanted to write all those little tidbits down, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you provided the right positive encouragement for Jeff. All right. We'll get to the thespian fashion show in a minute.
No rush.
I want to talk about the Venus vote, which
everybody wants to.
which came next. Okay. And so I spoke with Q. That was the last one of these interviews that I did.
Yeah.
Q said, hey, Ben said he voted for the wrong person by accident. That was not an accident. He said, me and Ben, we were supposed to write down Kenzie, and then I changed my vote, and he was then the only person left that voted for Kenzie, and so he said it was a mistake.
See, no episode pisses me off harder than that one because no conversation is shown from the pizza party, right? They make it look like Maria and I are friends. When Maria, I think she always wanted Q at that pizza reward because we sat down and she goes, do you want to sit at final 3 with us? Which for somebody who's only barked orders at you and never really checked how you're doing or talked strategy, it's like a backhanded compliment.
Mm-hmm.
And they were trying to get me to flip on Charlie, you know? And I'm like, Charlie was my true number 1 from Dumb and Dumber. And like Charlie and I were not making it so obvious that we were very close. Like there was a lot of times Charlie and I would come up with conflicting stories to feed everybody. But Q had wanted to flip on Kenzie. He was saying the mermaid dragons kind of stuff. And they were like, should we go with Kenzie? And I was just sitting there eating the pizza, going along with it, right? And this is where I feel like I was really robbed. Forget the million. That scene where I'm like pulling out, where I'm writing Kenzie's name down, I was ranting about Venus. And Venus and I were cool. And they show in the edit, I'm calling her a poser. The reason is because she snapped at me the night before for something unrelated. Mm-hmm. I felt like I didn't deserve it. I was like, we've been so cool. You've been pissing off everybody. Like, we get to that boat. Charlie's talking about Venus potentially having an idol, all this stuff. The plan was for Q to write Kenzie. I was never going to write it. The plan was for me. Hold up. I have it written down. Hold on.
Okay.
This I know I got
I'm
written
going to consult the journal.
Yes. Here's the chapter. The pizza party, Cowabunga. Okay. I found the line. You ready for this?
Ready. I'm ready.
Reading? I sat there patiently dogging slices in euphoria while simultaneously laughing and rolling my eyes back. I downplayed how much Kenzie and I were chilling hard, but Q and Maria were so dumb to not realize that her and Charlie were my number 1s and that I openly was ready to get Venus out. And with the same spiel on Liz about Venus and Liz having the numbers on Nami, and that's why Nami should be on the bench. Mm-hmm. I agreed with Q that we should put a hit on Kenzie, but I said I couldn't write her name down because it would cause chaos for me later. And then I even wrote at the end of it, LOL, because, this is after, so it did cause chaos, The Venice vote. This is the next page. Anyways, we get up to the voting booth, and I'm like bantering, like Maria and Venus are bantering. And I'm sitting there thinking like, man, I can't believe Venus is going home. There's this huge fight. And also I was like still in shock that Maria would force people to play rock, paper, scissors. Because Maria gave this whole spiel like, I'm going to feed whoever needs to be fed. And then it's like she brought Q, who had been on every reward. And Maria could do whatever she wants with her win. But just like, don't go on the spiel and then make people play rock, paper, scissors. And we're in the voting booth, and I'm like ranting about Venus while writing Kenzie's name down. I think I even said, Venus, you're going home or something like that. And we got down, and I'm like, it's hitting me. Like, I haven't eaten in 9 days. The orange soda, and I know it sounds so stupid, but like when you're not sleeping and you haven't had processed sugar in weeks, it feels like the closest thing to doing like, fucking like psychedelics or something. Like I
Whoa.
was hopped up, everything felt crazy. And it was like I felt so comfortable too. I wasn't like being so cautious. I just wasn't there, but I knew after I put it in because I put the vote in and I saw everybody's face in the voting booth, like the camera people being like shook. I was like, I wonder what they're so shook about. And I was like, it didn't hit me till I turned around. I was like, oh my fucking God, did I just do what I think I did? And we walk down and I look at Q. I'm like, I wrote Kenzie's now. You don't have to do it. And Q was like, okay, that's
Mhm.
fine. Because the plan was one of us was going to do it. Because even if it went to like a revote, it would have been Q, you know, like it's fine that she had one vote on. Like Maria and Q were so not aware that they didn't pay attention to that people that they pissed off the most were surrounding them and starting to outnumber them. And that's why Q wrote Venice, because he was supposed to write Kenzie, you know?
Mhm.
And yeah, it did cause chaos, but ultimately I'm a bit of an idiot savant and I felt really tight with my friends and there wasn't too much recourse. And I felt like it was great too, because like at that point, people weren't sure if I was really working with Q and Maria because people started to figure out the smoke screen. But it allowed me to drive a wedge the next day too. Did I feel like an idiot? Absolutely. But like
Mhm.
everybody who was my friend knew how much I was suffering with not sleeping and not eating, that I got a pass for it, you
Yeah.
know? I just didn't expect it to be so much recourse at Ponderosa and affect the jury.
Yeah.
But that was like the only question that was meant for me at Final Tribal.
Okay. Tell me about the thespian fashion show.
Okay. So like I had shook Q's hand. I was like, listen, like I wouldn't say I was like best friends with him, but I really didn't mind him at that point. And I would talk to him once a day and I would go really hard at those tribals. And I'd always said to Q, the day I'm publicly cool with you, you got to be worried. That day there was a sense of calm, you know. Like I think Liz and Kenzie tried to tell Maria that it could potentially be Charlie. You know, it would have been Maria or Q if Maria didn't win that challenge. And we're sitting at camp, and I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, Kenzie had already started to wear my clothes, and Charlie had been wearing my vest. And I had painted this flag, and I was like, I think I'm going to rock the Q skirt. Screw it. Like, I had this idea I was going to open
Mhm.
tribal with giving Jeff this flag, which I did. And if you watch the edit, I'm carrying a flag into tribal, but then it just miraculously disappears. I'm wearing the Q skirt with all the paint brushes in it. Kenzie's wearing my vest. I had painted the daisies on her eyes. Liz is wearing her rice jar. I put a string on it and painted a $sign and made the rice's power advantage. And Maria was wearing my overalls. I was like, great. Maria's gonna think I'm an idiot and like this fashion show, and I'm gonna be blindsided, and they'll still not take me seriously. But like they don't realize everybody whose game they sunk is surrounding and outnumbering them. And before we went to tribal that day, we're all trying on these outfits and talking about what we're going to say at tribal. And Liz and Kenzie had this club snuff song that they kept singing, like on piss, like a 2000s club thing. And we were laughing the whole day, and it was very calm and chill. And we get to the fashion, we walk in, it was like the Zoolander Dara leaked fashion
Mhm.
show. Jeff is like, what's going on? Maria pulls machetes out of my overalls, cuts the flag open. I give Jeff this painting. And Q, the only one not wearing somebody else's clothes, is so oblivious that everybody's like vibing together. And Jeff is trying to make sense. He's like, I think you guys are just going to get me with another blind side. And Q isn't going to be the one going home today. And Q, like, hearing that from Jeff is not getting the smoke signals, you know? And I had even like said this line that didn't make the edit, where it's like, what does Ben? He goes, Jeff's going to everybody. Liz, how confident are you about tonight's vote? She's like, I don't know who Ben's really working with, 50%. Charlie, how do you feel? Charlie's freaking out. It might be him. He gets to Maria. Maria's like, I am certain it's going to go my way tonight. Q goes, 100% Jeff. And then it gets to me. I speak last. I go, 70, 60,
Mhm.
40%. And then Jeff goes, Ben, that's a really interesting take. Like, so what does tonight's vote represent? And I say, and I'll never forget this. I was like the proudest one-liner. And I said in my Mike Bloom interview, I wanted to give a face-off level blindside. I say, I think tonight's vote really reveals who's a goat for the vote and who's controlling it. And as I say that, Maria turns to Liz, going, not realizing she's about to get, her shit rocked.
Mm-hmm.
We go to vote and Q gets taken out. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it was great, dude. It was like we all put on a performance and made Q super comfortable. And I was like, if none of these people had talked to me for a week and all of a sudden they're making me feel so important, something must be going on, Because before
thespian
that,
fashion show.
yeah, because you see it in the edit. Before that, people were like, oh, let Q be Q. He can go sit by the water by himself.
Mm-hmm.
But on this day, I was like, Q, come chill with us. We're chilling by the fire. I'll make you a papaya, like kind of mean-spirited. But I did tell him 2 days before that, the day we're cool publicly, you got to worry. And
You warned him.
yeah.
Okay. I want to jump ahead to in the finale. You won the Final Four immunity, and it was a great moment for you. Like looking back on how it turned out, like have you thought about like did you feel like you needed to maybe put yourself into the fire, or that doesn't change anything?
I wanted to go into fire. I knew I didn't have a chance of really winning, but I just wanted to tell my story because I felt like I had a good one and I felt like I had a decent game with the cards I was dealt. I couldn't be as active of a social player as I wanted because I simply had no energy. You saw how garish I was even in the edit, But there was this conversation where, like, I don't know what Kenzie said in her exit press, but I remember her being like, we all kind of thought it was Charlie's game to win. And me knowing how I was treated, seeing the looks from the jury before we got to Final Tribal, I was like, I just want to give my friends a chance to rip it up, like I'll be fine. Looking back, like maybe I should have been less that way, but I don't think anybody can understand what it's like to sleep 15-minute increments in a total of 90 minutes a day for like 2 weeks, not eating. I think I lost like 19 pounds. My body was shaking the entire time. Kenzie and I had this chat. Like I still thought, especially considering that a lot of people said the reason they voted for Kenzie was based on what she would do at the million. Liz could have crushed that answer on any level, So it was like Kenzie and I had this conversation. She's like, I don't know what my story's going to be. I don't know what my pitch is going to be. And she's like, but I know I'm good at fire, So it was like we had a conversation. It wasn't like I put Kenzie to fire as like a fuck you or anything like that. She was like, she acted grateful at the time. She was like, I can do this. I can do this. And that's why it's like I liked the Final Four a lot because it was kind of a different Survivor story. And I know a lot of people can say, Ben's an idiot. He could have had a shot. Like, who would do that? You're basically giving up your million. That's like woo with Tony. But it's like, I really did clock the room beforehand. And I was just like, I get to tour. I get to play guitar. I think when I talked about my life to a lot of the people on the jury, they're like, he's got it figured out, kind of like, fuck him, So that was what was going on in my mind. And then Kenzie crushed fire. I mean, we did almost go to matches. I don't know if that's been revealed yet. I think it took 58 minutes to make fire.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long one.
I think Charlie had said it had gone to matches, but I didn't hear the time reported.
I know Maria said it was an electric energy that night, but it really was not. So, but yeah, it was just, it was kind of like I wanted my two friends to have a shot because I knew Kenzie was friends with a lot of the jury. I thought she had a shot too, but in my eyes, every single person who was on the jury constantly said all day, Maria especially, Q especially, we're going to vote for whoever played the hardest. Even Q, like a month ago, we're talking on the phone. He's like, if you wanted my vote, you needed to play a game like I did. I'm like, A, Kenzie? B, if I played a game like you, I would have been sitting next to you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I went on to play the game I played. Yes, I wanted to play a slightly more energetic version of that, but I was still true to myself and ethical. And like, it was even to the point where like I told some people they were going home before they went home. They just didn't believe me. Like when
Yeah.
Hunter put that whole plan to send me home was because he came up to me and goes, Ben, have you heard my name tonight? I go, I'd be lying if I didn't. You are a threat,
Mhm.
And then he turned around and started to put my name out there. It's like these people were so believing I had no agency that they didn't believe that they were going home after I told them. So it was like, I have a great goat to the end story. Like I was in on the moves. I told some of them what was happening. I had the smoke screen. I had an immunity finally. But at the end, they didn't want to hear what I had to say. So it's all good.
Yeah. All right.
I
Well,
also
I
felt like
want
I
to hear
didn't
what
make
you have to say.
enemies on the jury. That's why I was so shocked. Like I was just like, the only enemy I had was Maria,
Mhm.
But
All right. Well, with the time that we have remaining, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit more about the final three and what your experience was like with the jury.
my experience sucked. Like it did not rock. Like, even if you're not going to vote for me, I couldn't imagine if like Tevin or Soda or Tiff or Venus or Maria sat at final three and nobody asked them a single question, how
Mhm.
they would feel for the year leading up to how it was portrayed, if they would feel comfortable with it. It was like there was something personal against me and to a lesser extent Charlie, and I couldn't understand what I had done to these people to warrant that type of behavior. And it even carried on when we got home. Like I wasn't like, like that Secret Six felt like they were hot shit till they got humbled on Twitter by the edit for like a year. Like none of them talked to me. And I found out why much later. And again, it had nothing to do with me. And it just sucked. It was like I was very happy Kenzie won. I was sorry Charlie won. I would have voted for Charlie. That's been talked about in an extent in other interviews. But it's like you're sitting in the after show and people are saying it really was this or that. It was like I was a fly on the wall. And I was like, what was I out here 26 days for? To just be treated like this, And it's like, I'm cool with a lot of these people now, but in that moment, I think about that Owen exit press where he's like, you have to compartmentalize the fact you got no votes. But I told Owen, it's like, at least they asked you questions. I got told time, especially when I was making great points. And the craziest part, they didn't show in the edit. Q stood up for me at Final Tribal. Q was like, Ben played the game. Maria called me a liar about all my moves. Q was like, actually, considering they were so close, I was shocked. Q was like, he's telling the truth. I was part of that. He did do that. I was like, but it wasn't enough. Their mind was clearly made before we got to tribal. And like,
Mhm.
again, I'm not mad about the outcome. It's just as a human, you just feel like you're back to being the kid nobody picked on for baseball or something. And like, I treat people the way I want to be treated. Even when Maria had sunk my game and she was crying about the letters from home, I comforted her even after she called me a liar for the 12 hours leading up to that. And I cut her up papaya. Like, I just didn't think it was going to be that way. And it really was like a hard pill to swallow. And then sitting in the after show, and, Jeff asked me this question about being a 0 vote finalist and being an eccentric kind of like Carolyn who rips. It was just, I just wish I had some alone time to just kind of be by myself or at least be with Charlie and Kenzie, because that boat ride back to camp was awesome when we could just be laughing and not have to deal with that attitude we were getting at tribal. It just, I don't know if any of those people return and they make it to the end. I hope they never know what that feels like. Especially me. I had suffered so hard. I didn't sleep. I never complained about it. I was in on the moves. I tried to make people feel comfortable. And I was just like, I don't know, man. It's like, that sucks, dude. That sucks,
Ben, this was really great to get through and go over everything because
You got to make that
there was
chapter reading a clip.
yeah there was a lot more than I even anticipated.
Sick. I played the game. Nobody realized. Nobody saw it. But
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
once you're in a band and run a record label and you have to deal with personalities, you know how to be like, yes, sir. No, ma'am. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. All right, Ben. I know you have a lot coming up this summer. Where could people find out more about how to see you this
Well, I
summer?
think the coolest thing is I've got this new album inspired by my time on the show. And, there's a lot of people on it. Coach plays on it, Soda's on it, Bryce Isaiah,
On the
Tim.
album?
Yeah. I got this new album, Tears on the Beach, and it's not really about Survivor, but it's about like navigating all this shit. But like, it's like a love letter to my experience. It's essentially the Ben edit, but it includes a lot of my friends who are big time musicians as well. And like, I'll be in the magazines and I have a bunch of tour dates in the fall. But prior to that, like next month, I'm going on tour with my band. I play in another band called Gorilla Toss, and we're opening for Primus in arenas and amphitheaters across the West Coast and Midwest. So I'll be out there, but my social media, I post a lot of stuff. So, and like even today, I was at the guitar store shredding, and this dude was like, "Whoa!" And then he realized it was me, and he was a Survivor fan. It was like, "I'm out there, dude. Just come find me. We'll chill hard."
All right. Well, we chilled mad hard today.
Yeah, I would say we chilled ever so hard.
Ever so hard. I appreciate you, Ben. All right, we got to leave it there. Thanks so much.
Cool.
All right, everybody, there you have it. Ben Katzman, and great job there by Ben. I thought that was a really interesting conversation. I loved his journal. It's something that I really regret not doing with my own Survivor experience, that I feel like I have forgotten so much of what actually happened during the game, and not just what was on the TV show. And I really wish I had that kind of record. So I really think that that's such a great idea for a Survivor player to have gone through that experience. And so for Ben, it really also sounds like it was a very therapeutic thing for him to have written things down. So he had his own first person account of all of this. So that's a really, really cool idea. Ben's a really fun guy to talk to. And so looking forward to chatting with him more in the future. Hope you enjoyed this interview. Of course, I love to read your comments here on our YouTube channel, so go ahead and keep them coming. Love to get the feedback. Looking forward to bringing you a few more of these Survivor 46 interviews along the way here as we continue on our Summer of Survivor here on RHAP as a podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.